Alrighty. All right, can you guys all see that screen? I saw Scott's presentation and I decided I have to start stepping it up because they're so pretty. Right, okay, so good evening all. Oh, this is right in the way. And thanks for joining us tonight while we have a look at the power of social media. First off, just a caveat tonight, I'm just really showing information. Whatever you decide to do with this is completely up to you. It's not anything about judgment or condemnation or even like any sort of shame. It's just hopefully going to shine a light on some key facts and figures about the world's biggest, and I mean biggest in scope, size, scale, and of course money, the world's biggest businesses and platforms. Like I said, what you do with the information is of course up to you. Also, a lot of the information from this presentation, like quotes and like screenshots and whatnot, I've got from what was a Netflix, which is ironically a form of social media. It's a documentary called The Social Dilemma. It's definitely worth a watch if you get the time. It goes into a lot more detail. It explores the further reaching implications of social media, a lot more than what we're going to look at tonight anyway. So I guess really tonight, we're just going to have a look at a few things. We're not going to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but hopefully far enough so that we can make, if you want to, some changes or some decisions or not. The choice is, like I said, completely yours. So there are only two industries that call their customers users, which is illegal drugs and software. This is a fantastic quote by a gentleman called Edward Tufte. Not only is it true, not only is it good because it's true, it's also good because we can unpack it and find some interesting facts within the comparison. So I guess the question is to begin the analysis really is, why do drug users, why do they keep coming back to their illegal drugs? Obviously, we have some ex-users within the fellowship worldwide. I'm sure they would agree that, and I guess just to break it down to the most simplest point or the most simplest answer, it's because they're highly addictive. We've all heard testimonies of how they might have tried to give up on their own strength, but they couldn't. They needed God to obviously take away the addiction to make their lives better. So I guess just going more into it as well, on the same side of that coin, why do users of social media keep coming back and using it? It's because it's highly addictive. The thing is that social media is a form of a drug. We all have a basic biological imperative or a need to connect with other people. Now, this connection that we crave directly affects the release of dopamine in the reward pathway. We'll go into that a bit more later. There are people much, much smarter than us, and computer programs and algorithms and whatever else that are even smarter than the people that made them, that they're pouring all their time and energy and money into making this endeavor of social media as successful and as addictive as possible, to keep us returning to our phones over and over and over again. But the question is why? What's the reason for this? And should we even care? Hopefully I can show you the answer is yes, we should care. But before we do that, we have to look at the product. So what is the product? If you were to say that any of those things were the product, you got Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube. If you were to say that they were the product, you would be wrong. That's not the product. What about the adverts that we see? Obviously, we all watch YouTube. There's the ads for car insurance. Is that the product? No. Believe it or not, you are the product and your time is the product being sold. More to the point, the opportunity to secure a fragment of your time is what's on the table and being bought and sold. In the documentary, a guy called Jaron Lanier states that the gradual, slight, imperceptible change in your behavior and perception is the product. Now that all might seem quite dark and nefarious and ominous, I guess, but if we break that down, what it really means is that someone will pay for you to have a thought manipulated into what they want. The key here is that it's imperceptible. That means that you don't even know it's happening, but that doesn't mean that it isn't happening. That's really important to understand. In very basic terms, I guess a personal example from myself, at the start of lockdown, I decided that I need to lose some weight. Still going on that journey. So we obviously bought the bike. I was like Googling diets, Googling fitness stuff, just trying to get better. Very, very soon after I started doing those sort of things, I was getting presented with ads to do with that. Anyways, long story short, I watched an advert for some resistance bands that I never had looked at buying or considered purchasing them. But at the end of the ad, it prompted me to buy them, and I did. So I guess using that real world example, you can see here that my time was the product that the platform sold to the resistance band company. And it obviously worked for them because I bought them. And it clearly works as a business model. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening at such levels and at such scale. Now, I guess the question after that is, what's wrong with that? Did I need resistance band? No. Did I need them? No. Have I used them? Not really. So apart from, I'm not really any better. I'm not really any worse off in the grand scheme of things. It hasn't really changed that much. But I guess looking at that process as a whole, we have to go back to maybe newspapers. So newspapers had adverts, as you know. Radio has adverts, as you know. TV obviously has adverts, as you know, and they're all targeted in a very similar way. For example, if you're reading the Financial Times, if there is an advert in there, it isn't going to be about I don't know, something that wouldn't appeal to that kind of person. If you're on the radio, if you're listening to LBC, the adverts for that won't be the same as people listening to History. They're different markets. So it's obviously the same with TV as well, being that it wouldn't advertise the same things to a person watching TV at 9 o'clock at night, maybe like a very highbrow show. I'm sure Pastor Steve can tell us what that might be, but they wouldn't advertise those type of ads for maybe a luxury watch or car or anything like that to the same people watching Murder, She Wrote at 12 in the afternoon. They're just different markets. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the model isn't that different. It's they're targeting people in a very broad sense based on what data that they have. So this is the next evolution of that, obviously from a sales perspective, that they can, the same targeting and plans are used to influence our way of thinking, and on a more deeper level, what is our socially acceptable norms and eventually our behavior. These companies are spending millions on psychologists, scientists, and software to find the best way to keep us engaged. All the while keeping us engaged on our phone scrolling, they're gathering more and more data and information on you to then predict what you might do. Their goal is to predict with relative certainty, just like they did with me. They presented my time to the resistance band saying, I am pretty certain this guy's going to buy the bands. That's what they're selling. So I guess on a more broader sense, they can predict with relative certainty our actions, thoughts on topics, and so on to keep you engaged. Now the question is, how do they do this? The answer is through screen time. Now they want to, so companies like Facebook, Google, TikTok, and others like that, their business model is to keep you engaged on their screen as much as possible. So even to a broader extent, things like Netflix, Messenger, WhatsApp, all of these things that will send a notification or an email or anything like that, their goal is to get you engaged on their screen because they're gathering data to then sell. So they're always going to be thinking at that time, how much time can we get them to spend? How much of your life as a consumer can you give to us in time? So obviously, generally speaking, we're asleep for 8 hours, some more, some less, working for the other 8, some more, some less. And then with the other 8 hours of our 24-hour day, we have free time. But as you can see here from this screenshot here, I've chosen a extreme example because I wasn't going to do like a 2-hour one. This person, Abby, her screen time, nearly 7 hours is all taken up of screen time. So social networking and all that stuff. It's how they keep you engaged. And this isn't average. This is probably on the more extreme end. However, it is happening at an increasing level with society. So these companies, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever, they're all competing fiercely with each other and with our real lives for our attention, which our time and attention is a finite commodity. There are only so many hours in the day, and therefore they want to maximize the opportunity window. If they could market us, if they could get us on our phones for 24 hours a day, they would. They would try, for sure. So I guess just to have a quick look at social media, maybe going back a couple of years, social media used to be a tool. I'm talking years ago now. So it was a great tool that connected people that maybe would have never been connected or even reconnected. So they brought people together, which is, like we said, which is what people crave. It's a great way to communicate across countries and across oceans. Tools that we use actively today, like right now, like Zoom and Skype, to stay connected during pandemics, for example. It is a really good tool. But like I said, Zoom and Skype is a tool. It's not necessarily social media. So really good things, of course, but social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever else, they have evolved, and they were once like Zoom or Skype, but they've evolved into something else. Where they used to connect people, they now actively are trying to make money. There's a reason that Facebook is one of the biggest companies, not tech company, the biggest company in the world. I think it's like sixth or fifth, which is crazy. It's worth billions. Now, the next bit here, actually, I've taken from the documentary as well. Is talking about tools a bit more. It's giving a pretty good example. It's saying no one got upset when bicycles showed up as a tool. Everyone was happy riding around on bikes, thinking no one ever said bicycles were affecting people negatively. No one ever said bicycles have ruined society. No one ever said that bicycles are tearing apart families or whatever else. No one ever said that a bicycle can't let you know what's true and what's not, what's fake news and what's real news. No one ever said that. If something is a tool, then it's genuinely sitting there waiting patiently to be used. It's not demanding anything from you. If something is not a tool, then it's demanding something from you, it's manipulating you, and it wants something from you. We've moved away from a tools-based tech environment to an addiction and manipulation-based tech environment. That's what's changed. Social media is no longer a tool anymore. It's just that's just waiting to be used. It has its own goals and its own means and methods of pursuing them by using your own psychology, your own mind against you. So we all know there's obviously a problem when people favor the company of their inanimate object, the phone, over people in their proximity. It just sends such a negative message of where we are in society. If you think about it, we've got our brains that haven't actually changed that much. When God made man, Adam and Eve, however long ago that was, we were as we are now. We had brains, bodies, all that stuff. If we fast forward to now, in 2020, we have our same old brains that would have been the same hardware from back then. So I guess looking at the screen that's on the other side of it, think about on the other side of the screen being thousands of engineers and computers and algorithms and whatever else, which have their intrinsic goals are different to yours. So I guess if you think about your brain, which is thousands of years old, really, it hasn't changed, versus all these people, who is actually going to win? Just if you think about it, it's already winning. So if you think about it, when your phone goes off, do you check it straight away? I think that's probably a yes. Or even if you hear someone else's phone ding, you get the urge to check your own phone. There's even a thing now called phantom vibrations, where your mind and your body thinks that your phone is going off. This is by design. All these companies have done these by design. Let's have a look at how this works. So this is all about the reward pathway, more specifically intermittent reinforcement. Now, what this is a randomized reward response to a behavior. So obviously the easiest and simplest way to think about this is a slot machine in a casino. I'm sure we've all seen them in movies or whatever. So I guess when you break it down, it's a randomized response. It's a randomized reward in response to a behavior. Now the behavior is pulling the lever and the outcome is randomized. So they don't know if they're going to win, but they keep pulling because they want to find out. Now, there is no more powerful formula to get someone to feel or act in a desired way. So I guess, now how does this relate to this in our context, to us in this context? So the behavior that we're talking about to get the outcome is simply picking up your phone. That's the trigger point. Then the outcome is randomized in that you don't know what your phone will have for you. For example, the system for notifications is designed just like a slot machine. In particular, the you've been tagged in a photo is especially effective as it speaks directly to how you're being perceived. Is it a good picture? Is it a bad picture? You need to check it to find out. So it's so addictive in that it's just attacking you, or it's activating you on so many different levels. So I guess every time you check your phone for a notification, you're playing the game to see what you're going to get. If you refresh your emails, you're playing the game to see, have I got a voucher? Have I got a discount code? Have I got a new email from whoever? You're playing the game. Every time you scroll through Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you're playing the game to see what you're going to get. It's highly, highly addictive. Now, I did mention in the second slide, there's a quote by Edward Tufte. He says, there are only two industries that call their customers users, drugs and software, illegal drugs and software, which tells us that social media is a type of drug. Just to quickly recap on this, because it ties in perfectly with this point here, is that we have a basic biological imperative need to connect with people. That directly affects the release of dopamine in the reward pathway. Now, the reason for that is that this chemical dopamine, it rewards us for coming together and for living in communities, basically for safety, to find mates, and to propagate our species. So there's no doubt that social media, which optimizes the connection between people, is going to be addictive because it activates the dopamine. So in fact, dopamine should come with a strong warning in that it's addictive, highly addictive. It's the same chemical that's released when gambling and also fishing. But it's now known and accepted that social media elicits the same base responses as gambling. And just like gambling addicts, it has a hold over you. So just to slightly shift gears and staying focused on our brains and our minds and kind of how they work, we're going to have a quick look at social communities and the Dunbar number in context. So there's an anthropologist named Robin Dunbar. Anthropology is the study of human societies and cultures and their development. Now, he suggested that there's a cognitive limit to the number of people with whom one can maintain stable social relationships. That means relationships in which an individual knows who each person is and how each person relates to every other person in that connection. So it's basically thinking about base level connections. Now, this number that he states is around 150, which might seem like a lot. And it does, of course, vary from person to person, but not much. It's a good ballpark figure for personal social connections. Now, if you think about it, for each of us, use me an example, I guess, we're probably capped at this number without social media. So, for example, we do live in bigger communities. That's fine, but our actual bubbles are a certain size. What I mean by that is, think about, you've got the fellowship. So in Medway, there's around 40 or 50 people. So that's already quite a few. Look at our work. Work can have, I don't know, between 20 to 50 people that you have to get on well with in order to put food on the table. So that's a very deep need. And then you think about your family. You've got maybe 10 people in your immediate family, maybe 20 to 30 in your extended family. You're at that number. You're at that number already without social media. So what Dunbar suggests is that your brain is only wired and capable to have that many 150 stable social relationships. So if you think about communities from way back when, like the main point of them was to come together for security and safety, to protect. So you had to trust that the people protecting you had your best interest and that you know them well enough so that if there was a fire or a predator, they would say, Nathan, there's a lion, we have to go. For example, obviously I'm very simplifying it. So the whole point was that you had to trust them enough and know that they knew you and that you know them, and that it was a safe community. They had a common unity. So that's the basic reason for this. Now, you can of course go higher on this Dunbar number. And it's thought that the further or existing social connections, so any connections after that number, or if you form more stable ones after that number, your existing connections will become unstable. So that's not ideal. And I guess what he's saying, what he's suggesting is that we're not designed to have this level of social connectivity that we currently have access and are encouraged to expand. It's constantly being dosed to us to keep us engaged, as there's a deep need for human connection that these programs and systems are directly exploiting. People think that the more friends or the more people you have following you, the better off you are. But this whole theory suggests the opposite, and the pressure is clear, and we have some real world negative effects that we're about to have a quick look at. So I've taken this screenshot directly from the documentary that I mentioned earlier. The source for this is the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in America. Now, this shows a clear upward trend of hospital admissions for non-fatal self-harm from 01 to 15 in girls aged 15 to 19 in the purple lace and 10 to 14 in the pink one just underneath that. As you can see, it was fairly stable throughout that time, especially with the 10 to 14s. But at 2009, something happened and it spikes. So what happened in 2009 to cause this consistent spike upwards? Now, the answer is this is the year in which social media was readily available on mobile phones, which is a very interesting fact, really. And if we look at also I don't have this slide for it, but there's a very similar trend. I'm talking like very, it's pretty much the same numbers. There's the same trend for suicide rates as well, which is a real world terrible consequence. So it is likely that there's a few reasons at play here, a few different reasons as to why we're seeing these numbers. And it really is worth stating as well that while correlation doesn't necessarily mean cause, it's a very interesting filter to look at the data through. The only real point that can be made at that time to explain the increase is social media platforms being available on mobile phones. So another compounding reason just to support this is that I've taken this bit again from the documentary. It says, another compound reading is that we curate out of our lives around this perceived sense of perfection. So basically post that perfect picture, for example, because we get rewarded in the short-term signals, hearts, likes, thumbs ups. We conflate that with value and we conflate that with truth. And instead, what it really is fake, brittle popularity that is short-term, so it doesn't last forever, and leaves you even more empty and vacant than before you did it. Because it forces you to go into this vicious cycle where you're always thinking, what's the next thing? What do I need to do now? Because I need it back. I need that feeling back of being valued, which isn't a real feeling. Now, think about that process compounded times by 2 billion people that are active on social media. It's about how they react to the perception of others. And it's so many people, and it's not a good situation. As we can see here, it has clear negative effects. So just on some more effects we have here. So we are currently using social media. We're training and conditioning a whole generation of people that when they're uncomfortable or lonely or uncertain or afraid, they have a digital dummy, just like babies, really. So this is atrophying or diminishing their own ability to effectively deal with these feelings. Now, these feelings that they're feeling are perfectly normal. They're normal human feelings that is actually good to kind of deal with. I guess further to this pacifying of the feelings that are okay to feel, the mindset that these platforms encourage isn't good either. A mindset of super short attention spans, a better off culture, getting bored and moving on very, very quickly, unfriend, unfollowed, dislike without any accountability. We've got kids, teenagers, and now adults struggling to build strong real world connections and relationships in the real world. These are real issues that are also recent issues. I guess people have to be okay with being alone. because people have to be okay with being alone, but they're not, because they have the quickest way out every time. They have to go into their pocket, pull out their phone, and they have the world of distraction at their fingertips. So it's very, very interesting. Obviously, in John 14, verse 18, Jesus said, "He will not leave us comfortless. He will come to us." He says he's given us the Holy Spirit so that even when we're alone, we're not alone. We have his power and his spirit with us all the time, which is fantastic. So I guess kind of just wrapping it up now a little bit, we're closing down the thoughts. If we boil everything down, the biggest point here of social media is about time. It's kind of not thinking about the more ominous and like nefarious kind of sinister things behind that. If you look at the basic desire for these platforms, they want your time, which they're competing for with each other. They're competing for it with your family. They're competing for your time with your friends. They're competing it with the fellowship, and they're competing with, most importantly, they're competing with your time with God. They only have one goal, which is to get you engaged. That's their only goal. They, I guess it's up to you if you want to take back control and you decide where your time is best spent. That's a decision that only you can make. Is it family, friends, fellowship, reading, praying? The list can go on. I guess the whole point of tonight, understanding how and why they do this, is part of the battle. The other part is up to you. What do you do with the information that you now have? Like I said at the beginning, these are just some of the facts and figures on the power of social media. And I guess understanding how, why, and what they do was the main goal tonight. So just to leave you with a final thought on how precious your time is. It's an equal, meaning it's the same for everyone. And it's an irredeemable commodity in that once it's spent, you can never get it back. So it matters greatly how you choose to spend it. And obviously we know how we want to spend our time. That's